This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Erik Schlogl served as an expert witness in the first-of-a-kind court case against ratings agency Standard & Poor's for issuing credit ratings that resulted in sizable and foreseeable financial losses. That was way back following the financial crash of 2008, of course. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined from our Cape Town studios by Erik Schlogl, visiting professor from the University of Technology in Sydney, to talk about his latest lecture at UCT. It's entitled Lawyers, Maths and Money. It sounds captivating. Lessons for Quantitative Analysts. Erik, nice to have you with us on the Moneymakers this evening. Take me back, please, to that seminal court case that took on Standard & Poor's for botching the ratings.
Well, yes, it was the first case of its kind, actually, as far as I know, at least, that actually went to trial. And in the end, Standard & Poor's was actually found liable for the ratings that they issued on a product called a constant proportion debt obligation.
I mean, those were the days of fancy titles for complex products, of course. Has the world moved on? Have the ratings agencies learned from their erroneous pasts?
Oh, well, that's hard for me to say. Certainly, the world has moved on. I mean, a lot of these very exotic structured credit products, they are not nearly as popular as they were just in the run-up to the credit crisis. Actually, I don't think we'll see a CDO squared or the one that I'm talking about here, the CPDO, anytime soon again.
The risk here, of course, is fine. We've highlighted the problems of the CDOs and all of those sorts of fancy financial products that came pre-2008 through the financial crisis. That's all well and good. The question now, though, is do we trust the ratings agencies to be doing a better job post the financial crisis than they were before? Or is there another gremlin lurking in the system that they haven't yet spotted?
Well, I think that one of the biggest problems with the products in the run-up to the financial crisis was that the rating agencies were actually dealing with very new to them, very complicated structured deals that required some very sophisticated quantitative modeling that they actually hadn't done before. And perhaps one would hope that now in post-crisis that they've gone back to more of the business that they were doing, that they have been doing for decades, which is rating bonds and the like on more fundamental criteria.
Yeah, your talk, which you're giving at UCT, is entitled Lawyers, Maths and Money. It sounds like an unholy trinity, the three together.
Yes, well, with apologies to Warren Zevon, it's just sort of a play of words on his song back from, I don't know, back from the 50s or 60s. It is, in a way, because it brings together those three components. Of course, the money being the financial product, and then the maths referring to the very sophisticated mathematics that are required to actually assess the risk, or to have any chance of assessing the risk of those complicated products. And of course the lawyers then came in when everything had gone south and some people had lost a lot of money.
So the purpose of the talk at UCT then is to what, warn us of another impending crisis, or is it purely retrospective?
Well, it's not purely retrospective because it does contain some interesting lessons, especially for quantitative analysts. Not just restricted to rating agencies, but quantitative analysts using sophisticated mathematical models in many different contexts out there, in investment banks, on the buy side and on the sell side. So one of the things that actually came out in that court case is that even though there were glaring inconsistencies in the model that Standard & Poor's used to assess the risk, what actually in the end made the case was the inputs to the model. So that really went to show that, well, garbage in, garbage out. So no matter how good your mathematical model is, if your model inputs are not realistic or perhaps too optimistic, then you're not going to get a good result. And that's something that applies generally to modeling in financial markets, and it's certainly not restricted to this case. It's just that in this case, it was highlighted in in a very, very strong fashion. And of course, it serves as a lesson that even as a quantitative analyst, the company, at least that one is working for, can be found liable for mathematical modeling and for the inputs into the mathematical models that one might have used.
I mean, we understand the world far better. We understand the origins of the species. We understand the origins of our universe, courtesy of mathematics. It is a wonderful and precise science. So can we use mathematics better in future to catch out the baddies?
Well, I would say definitely yes. One of the topics that is now an expanding area of research, both on the practitioner side and also on the academic side, is this issue that one calls model risk. So rather than just paying lip service to the fact that models are only an approximation of reality, there are now actually considerable efforts underway to, in fact, assess the risk that the models that we are using are wrong, that they only approximately reflect what is really happening, and that in any conclusions that we draw from these models, we have to take into account the fact that the model could be wrong.
Well, the mathematics may be pure and the mathematics may be scientific, but it's only as useful as understanding the inputs, and those inputs invariably are human inputs, correct?
Well, it's humans who are putting the inputs into the model, and there is this anecdote that keeps floating around. I don't know the exact reference, but that at some stage just prior to the financial crisis, some models had hardwired into them that real estate prices in the US could never fall, which is, of course, then unsurprising that those models did not perform very well when they did fall. But on the other hand, from the discipline of statistics, we do have methods for estimating inputs that we should be putting into the models, and more importantly, when we use those methods, they can also supply us with the level of confidence that we should have in those inputs. So we need to actually take what statistics tells us, what the statistical methodology tells us, a lot more seriously, and rather than saying, oh, the mathematical method has given us this number as the best estimate, and to take that as gospel is to actually take the rest of what statistics are telling us very seriously as well, which is the uncertainty that is always associated with that best estimate.
So quantitative easing, that's just quantitative analysis is only useful up to a point then. You've also got to be doing qualitative studies here as well. You can't simply be taking one piece of data in isolation.
Oh, that's right, that's right. And especially one should always do sanity checks, right? To look at whether a model, a quantitative model, the results that it has given us, whether they actually make sense from a common sense perspective, or from a human's understanding of the market from that sort of perspective. And one of the things that certainly came out in this court case, to return to that, is that Standard & Poor's kept insisting that the quantitative analysis that was done for these products was only one aspect of what went into the rating. But in the case itself, no evidence was presented that a qualitative analysis was actually done. It was the only discussion really revolved around the quantitative analysis, and there were no arguments brought forward that might have justified the ratings based on qualitative analysis in addition to the quantitative analysis.
Now, for South Africa, we feel very vulnerable as South Africans right now. You may or may not be aware that we're sitting on the brink of a ratings downgrade as you bask in the glorious summer that Cape Town presents. It does provide a nice bubble in which to visit South Africa, but politically, socially, economically, we're sitting on the verge of a ratings downgrade. Those ratings are dependent on the very agencies that failed to spot the financial crisis. Do they still have a credibility crisis, the ratings agencies, or have they pulled themselves back from that particular brink?
Well, I think the rating agencies still have considerable influence in the markets, mainly because even though we are now many years out from the events that damage that credibility, no real alternative has emerged, right? So in the absence of another information provider, other analysis, the default is still to go back to the rating agency, and therefore their word still carries weight. I think they lost credibility a lot on the upside, so when they upgrade someone, maybe that won't be taken as seriously anymore. But when they are pessimistic, well, perhaps I think people take them actually more seriously than when they are being optimistic.
That is the great contradiction of the ratings agencies. Erik Schlogl, thank you very much. Visiting professor from the University of Technology in Sydney. He's going to be speaking at the University of Cape Town and talking about lawyers, money and ratings agencies. Let's get the exact title. Lawyers, Maths and Money. That is the title of the talk. Thank you for watching the Moneymakers this evening. More Moneymakers tomorrow. Till then, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.